Hey everyone, this is Mike and welcome to my guide slash walkthrough of E5S. Now, I don't like doing those standard typical guides, but more of a walkthrough of the fight where I take you through the whole fight using my clear POV and then explain all of the mechanics and how we handled them as a team. Of course, these strategies probably aren't the best out there, but these are the ones that works for us to clear it for our first time. So let's get into it. First mechanic he's going to be doing is a rate-wide AoE. Now there is also a very cool mechanic attached to some of his abilities, and that is that when he is charged up, you're going to need to do certain different things. So Judgment Volts is just normal straight-up AoE. When he does this, it will also spawn all of these little orbs on the field. Now you don't necessarily always want to be taking these orbs immediately, because there are certain mechanics for which you will need these orbs later down the line, and once you pick up an orb, it takes some time, or like there is a timer basically, before it runs out. Now the second mechanic that you can see here, I think there might have also been a tank buster happening at this point, a little bit before that. No, actually there isn't. But this one. So he spawns 4 spears on the outer corners of the arena, well, almost outer corners. But as you can see, there's going to be 3 big ones and 1 small one. This mechanic was in normal mode as well, and it works exactly the same. Basically, the big ones are going to do a big AoE, the small one is not going to do a single AoE, so we're just going to be moving towards the safe corner, basically. Get in position. I have no idea how our scholar survived this, by the way. Just got really lucky. Executor Summons makes an ad spawn, and for this one it's very important to make sure that the right person picks this up, because he will tether to the person that has the most stacks of orbs. So as you can see over here in our party list, it's a little bit unclear because I had to rip the thing from the Twitch because I forgot to record the whole thing. But our paladin here has 2 stacks of, I don't quite know what the debuff is called, but basically he has 2 orb stacks, whereas the rest of the party only has 1. And this is going to mean that our paladin is going to be tethered by the ad. Now, if, for example, somebody else gets tethered, once the ad locks in, you can't vogue the ad away or something like that, because the ad is untargetable. So make sure that as the off-tank, you have the most amount of stacks here. He's even going to pick up an extra one, just in case somebody picks up 2. The reason why everybody has a stack here, and why I am going to grab one right now, is because of the next mechanic. Fury's Bolt is going to make him power up. As you can see here on the buff bar as well, I have my buffs in a very weird place, I know, but he gets a stack of damage up, we'll just call it for now. This is going to make it so that certain abilities that he's going to be doing are going to be different, as well as that, for example, the rate-wide damage that he's going to be doing now, which is the Judgment Bolt again, is going to require us to have a stack, otherwise we're going to die. So whenever he casts Fury's Bolt, it's a good idea to pick up an orb. It's not always necessary, because some things just change the mechanic itself and not necessarily like require you to have a stack. But in general, whenever he does Fury's Bolt, make sure that you have a stack ready. Then next thing, Crippling Blow. This is just a tank buster, so just use your mitigation for this. You do not need a stack of this, and even though it looks like AoE, as you can see, it looks like a pretty big AoE even, this is just single target damage, so it doesn't matter if you're stacked on the tank or not. The tank buster that the ad does, which is constantly being kited here by the way, also does not do an AoE around you, even though it is the same AoE marker that they used in the 24-man. This is not an AoE, it's just a single target attack. Now for this ad, it's very important, this thing stays on the field for a very long time, and if the ad touches the person they're tethered to, that person will die. So basically the off-tank will constantly have to run circles around the boss, trying to basically not get touched by the ad. And then eventually the ad will go away as well. There we go, ad is gone. So as the off-tank, you do need to run around the boss quite a bit with this. The ad stays alive for a very long time, so do not get caught off guard, just keep running until it vanishes. Next mechanic is Storm Cloud Summons. Now this is basically a 2-part mechanic. The first part is that all 4 of the ranged need to go outside and bait this. This is baited by distance, so just make sure that you're standing far away from the boss. Now whilst the ranged are baiting this, make sure that all of the melees as well as the 2 tanks grab an orb, which is going to be for the next mechanic. Now we ended up fucking this up in the second part of the fight, where this mechanic happens again. So you're going to see me take a melee spot for that one as well. So you can see both of the ways on how you have to handle it basically. So all 4 of the ranged should get a purple marker, all of the melees and the 2 tanks should get a orange marker, and this will do the following. So the purple markers get dropped, they spawn a storm cloud, as you can see over here. It's also very important that these do not drop too close to each other, because if you drop them close to each other, they're gonna eat each other, and then they're gonna do big rate-wide damage and explode, so you don't want to do that. That is why we assigned every ranged a corner of their own. Now when it comes to the melees, as you could see right here already as well, they're going to be pulsating AoEs around them, so this is why we run to the outside, so that we do not get hit by these AoEs. Now the reason why they need a stack is because they are going to be hit by the thunderclouds, and getting hit by a thundercloud will normally deal a lot of damage and give you vulnerability up stack, but if you get hit by the cloud when you have an orb stack on you, then you basically do not get that vuln stack. It still does damage, so they will need to be healed, but they don't take the vuln stack, which is the main part of the mechanic here. So the way it works is ranged go out to bait the purple markers, which will appear now. This will drop the storm clouds. Then make sure you go to a safe position where the melees do not need to run towards, so they can run towards their cloud. They get hit by the cloud, and the mechanic is done. It's pretty much how that works. And make sure that your melees do have a stack of lightning resistance, or whatever it's called, before they get hit by the cloud. Then Ramuh will jump into the middle and do an attack called 11 Force. Very simple, this is just a knockback. You can even use your knockback immunes for this one, so people are going to be using sure cost arm's length, and you don't even have to worry about this too much. It does do a little bit of damage, but not too much. And then the storm clouds will do a few more pulses before they finally do decide to go away. Then the next mechanic is very important. So this mechanic has 2 different forms. It's either a normal one or an empowered one. In this case he casted Fury's Bolt, meaning this is going to be an empowered version of the mechanic. And this is also where the arena comes into play. So what he's going to be doing is he's going to summon 5 adds. He's going to summon a copy of himself here in the middle, and he's going to be summoning 4 Ixions on the side of the arena. Now the Ixions, and this isn't really all that important. The main important thing to know is where to stand and whether to have an orb or not. If he did the what's it called again, like Fury's Bolt, so if he has the orbs around him, you need to make sure you have an orb. If he didn't, you don't need an orb. And where you're going to be positioning is also going to differ. So since he had an orb, meaning that he was empowered, he's going to have a very strong knockback. So we're going to be standing just behind this middle line that you can see here. So on both sides of the arena you can see these small, like almost squares, more like rectangles. And we're going to be using these to position ourselves to get knocked back. So because it was strong, everybody needs to grab an orb, and we stand right behind the line, because then we don't get hit by the middle charge, and this will also knock us back far enough towards the back so that we do not get knocked off the arena. As you can see, we all get knocked back, and then the Ixions charge past. Now if back here, if he did not cast the Judgment Vault, meaning that he did not have this damage upstack or the orbs floating around him, you do not need to grab orbs, and instead of stacking right in front of the boss, we are going to be stacking all the way far away from the boss. So if this was the weak knockback without the Judgment or without the Fury Bolt, then we would have stacked right before the second line down here. So basically remember, if he is empowered, get close, grab an orb. If he is not empowered, do not grab an orb and get on the second line a little bit further here down the back, because the knockback is going to be a lot weaker, and if you then stand as close to the boss as we are doing now, then the knockback won't be far enough and you'll get hit by the Ixions and get thrown off the map. Crippling Blow, another tank buster. Again, as I said, this is not AoE, so you can just stand on top of each other for this one. Don't have to worry about it at all. And then we have another raid-wide Judgment Vaults. And after this we are basically going to be going into some sort of a Panto Crater mechanic, if you've ever done O11 Savage. For this one's very important that everyone grabs a... oh, it's actually called Surge Protection. But basically everyone needs to grab an orb when Thunderstorm starts casting, because of a mechanic that is going to be happening. Now it's also very important that you do not get hit by any unnecessary AoEs during this one, because any AoE that hits you will get rid of your stack, and you will need your stack to survive this mechanic that our paladin has right here. Whenever you get targeted by this circle, you're basically going to be getting an AoE on top of you, which goes out right there, and this will require you to have a stack, because this eats the stack. If you do not have a stack when this goes off, you die. So that's the first one, and then the other people that did not get it the first time around will get an AoE this time. And then as you can see, I lost my surge protection right here. So the whole thing about Thunderstorm is basically you're going to be grabbing an orb at the start of it, you're going to be dodging AoEs, and then you're also going to be getting a big AoE on top of you, which you need that stack for. And that's pretty much all that Thunderstorm is. It's just dodge AoEs, make sure you have a stack. Another Executor summons, so it's going to be yet another ad spawning, so make sure that if you are the off tank, grab enough orbs so that they will automatically tether towards you, and then start kiting the ad like you did last time around. And there's also going to be another Crippling Blow, so Tank Buster, make sure you mitigate through this. And then we're going to be seeing a new mechanic happen very shortly, which is called Stepped Leader. Now this is another attack that has two different forms depending on if he is normal or empowered. The normal version is basically a better version of Twisters. So we decide to stack up at the back of the boss. This basically makes it so that we have as much room as possible to dodge this attack, and to also basically bait all of the AoEs in one single area. You can spread this around if you want, but I just say stack up and run away as a group, because this is basically going to make it so that you have a lot more room to maneuver around. And since your off tank is still baiting or like kiting the ad, it's good to give them as much space as possible. So when the cost bar finishes, everybody moves away, and this will drop what we like to call the Twisters, because this is basically a mechanic from Twintania. And then the ad is still here, it's going to be tank bustering. And then we have another raid wide, so make sure you keep your co-tank alive, or your off-tank alive, because this raid wide AoE could very well kill them. Then we go into the next mechanic. Everyone needs to grab an orb for this one as well. If you do not have an orb, you're most likely going to get yeeted off the arena, I believe. But this is actually one of the cooler mechanics of this fight. What is going to happen is he is going to be summoning a bunch of spears, like we saw as the second mechanic that he did, but this time around it's going to be on both sides, and we as the players actually need to destroy these. The way where you need to get knocked towards, you can kind of see with these tethers, because he's going to be spawning Ixions on one side of the arena, thus making one side unsafe. And I'm running towards the wrong side, by the way. You can kind of see them here in the background. Now what you have to do is you have to line up as a team in front of these pillars, and you have to get knocked back through them, thus knocking over the pillars. So as you can see, we have a assigned position for this. Everybody lines up, and then he knocks us back through the pillars, and then basically these don't explode, but the pillars on the other side do. Now this is not everything that needs to happen. So when he spawns this clone over here, your tank, can be either the main tank or the off tank, needs to run over to their clone, or to this clone, and they actually have to do a duty action. Now this also does a shitload of damage to your tank, so we just ended up invulning this. So our paladin is gonna hollow ground the first one, and this mechanic happens a second and I believe even a third time, but we didn't see the third time. But basically we just use our invulns for this because it does a lot of damage. So what you first need to do is identify which side is safe. So in our case, he was going to be tethering over here, so this side is unsafe. This is spawning a bunch of Ixions, which you can see here in the background. Then people identify where they have to stand, which pillar is yours. There's only 7 pillars, so you don't need your second tank. Then the tank runs underneath of thingy, Ramu. Oh, actually no, you need to stand on Ramu, not on the clone. Stand on Ramu. And as you can see, there's like this big arrow right here. And when they're standing inside that arrow, they get a duty action. And when they press a duty action, it is basically going to weaken Ramu's charge. If you do not do this, Ramu is just going to do a very strong knockback and knock everybody off the arena. but when there is a tank in here and they press that duty action, the knockback is not as strong. We use our invuln for this because he is basically taking the charge head on, which is going to be doing a hell of a lot of damage, so that's why we don't do that. So I'll show it one more time. You're going to be seeing this a second time with an extra mechanic on top as well, so make sure that you know how to handle this one. So identify where the safe spot is, whether it's left or right, then find your pillar, and then when he's casting Centaurs Charge, this is where your tank needs to run into the duty action, like AoE I guess you could say, press the duty action to make sure that nobody gets knocked off the arena, and everybody gets knocked back, and then also make sure that your tank runs to the safe side, because not every invuln will last long enough to cover the AoEs as well, and I'm not quite sure if they put like a vulnerability up or something like that. So basically make sure that you run towards the safe spot. Then he's going to be doing another Fury's Bolt, but this one you do not need a stack for, because he's basically going to be changing one of his mechanics rather than adding extra damage on top of, for example, the Raid Wide. What's going to happen here is he's going to do another Stepped Leader, but instead of being Twisters this time, it is AoEs, or Donut AoEs. So make sure you're all stacked together. These are not super big, so your main tank can stay on the other side of the boss, or both of the tanks can do it, it's up to them. But basically, whenever he has Fury's Bolt, when he does the Stepped Leader, it's going to be donuts rather than twisters. So no buff, twisters, buffed donuts. Very important to remember that one. And then we have a Chained Lightning mechanic. I ended up picking up an orb, which was totally unnecessary. And the way we do this is as follows. So this mechanic will always start on healers, and we decided to split into 2 teams of 3. The tanks are going to be doing their own stuff, and then we have a healer, a ranged, and a melee. And what Chain Lightning is going to do is when the buff timer runs out, you'll see it when I get the buff, it is going to jump to the nearest person. So make sure you're kind of close to the person that you want to pass it to, but not too close, because it will also do a small AoE. So debuff is about to run out, and it jumps to me. As you can see, this small AoE. If the person that gave you the lightning gets hit by this AoE, they will die. So make sure that they don't get hit by this. The main tank will also get tank busted at this point. So make sure that you do not ignore your main tank's HP, because they're going to be taking quite a bit of damage. Now, the Chain Lightning will do 3 things. First of all, it will get rid of Surge Protection. So if you have an orb stack on you, it'll just get rid of that. So you don't need to pick up an orb for this, because you're basically just going to make it so that there's going to be 1 less orb on the field. Now it's going to give you Electrified as well as System Shock. Electrified means that by the time that this mechanic runs out, the timer runs out, it is going to jump to the next person. That's the Chain Lightning part of this mechanic. System Shock, on the other hand, is going to make it so that if you get hit by lightning damage, you're going to die. So basically that is why we're going to be passing it around in teams of 3, because by the time that the third person is going to pass it again, the System Shock is going to have run out. So as you can see, System Shock runs out, and I get the Chain Lightning again from my Scholar. So basically just stand relatively close to the person that you want to pass it to, not too close. That was another Raid Wide AoE, by the way. And then when it passes over, just move on to the next person and keep passing it around. There's a lot of passes that need to happen. I don't know exactly how many times you have to do it, but basically just keep passing until you notice that the debuff goes away. After this, grab another orb, because Fury's Bolt is happening again. So he's going to be powering up. So everybody grabs 1 orb. And then we have another Thunderstorm. This is the exact same mechanic as before, except there will be a little bit of some additions to it. As you can see, another familiar has spawned, so our tank made sure that he has enough of the orb stacks around him. And then of course everybody is going to be getting those AoEs again. So you need to make sure that everybody has an orb as well. And then towards the end we are going to be getting another Stepped Leader as well. So dodge the AoEs, make sure that you do not overlap these. And then we have Stepped Leader, Twisters again. And that is the end of the mechanic. At this point the familiar will also disappear. So I'll show it one more time. So right as Thunderstorm starts, the familiar is already on the field at this point. Just dodge your mechanics. And then after the second set goes out of these AoEs, that is when the stepped leader will go out as well. So twisters just keep on moving and do not hit each other with this one. And then the familiar will disappear at the end of the mechanic again as well. Another Crippling Blow. This is another tank buster. And then another Raid White AoE. This one is not empowered, so you do not need orbs for this. There's also not enough orbs on the field to cover your whole party, so good thing you don't need one for that. And then another Furies 14. This mechanic works exactly the same as before, it's just that this time around there will actually be a safe spot that you will need to look for after the knockback happens. So make sure that everybody has their Vulns or their orb stack. Then he's going to be spawning the spears. And then after the spears have dropped, you can see that he's doing 2 tethers this time around. So he's going to be summoning Ixions on both sides of the arena this time. Now I actually ended up running to the wrong side initially. So as you can see, he's spawning Ixions on this side of the arena. But he's also spawning Ixions on the other edge of the arena over here as well. Now I kind of looked at it the wrong way and then I noticed, oh shit, those are the wrong Ixions. Basically, these Ixions are also going to dash through the arena, but there's going to be one safe spot. So everybody finds their correct position. I ended up getting into mine right before the end. Again, another tank needs to do the duty action right here. We ended up using Home Gang for this one, so we used both of our invulns for it, because it does do a lot of damage. Get knocked back, and then as you can see there's a bunch of Ixions here. So after the knockback, make sure that you run towards the correct side before the Ixions do their dash, and then that resolves the mechanic. So it's basically exactly the same as the first time around, it's just that now after you get knocked back, you need to run towards a safe spot. For some reason it's always seemed like it is one of the 2 middle tiles, so I think it's basically always going to be like that, because if it's an outer tile, I think the person on the complete opposite side of the arena won't be able to make it in time, so I think it's always going to be a middle tile. But basically just look for the safe spot and just run there after the knockback. It's going to be doing another Fury's Bolt here, meaning that you should all go and grab an orb, because the next Raid White AoE is going to require you to have a stack. And then after this one, this is where we made a mistake, is going to be doing another set of Storm Clouds. So my ninja is actually going to be targeted here by my AoE instead, and I'm going to be taking the ninja spot in this one. So again, Stormcloud summons, people bait it on the corners, and then the 4 melees grab an orb. But since our ninja here, Master Adjuster, and then stand underneath the Stormcloud, this will get rid of your hated of 11 debuff. Of course, you did need a stack of this, because otherwise you will get an vuln up. And then he does 11 force again, which is the knockback, so you can just use your knockback prevention for this one if you want. I don't see why you wouldn't use it, because this is literally the only thing that it's used for. You cannot invuln the, what's it called again, when he does the dash through the middle of the arena. That mechanic cannot be knockback invulned, so you might as well use it for this one. Another Raid White AoE. And then another set of Chain Lightning. So again, exactly the same as last time, spread out in your 3 and 3 groups. Another Tank Buster going off here as well. And then just pass the Chain Lightning around as you did before. It's also going to be a Raid White again, so make sure you mitigate through this one, because it does do quite a bit of damage. And then this is also again gonna spawn orbs, because after this there is going to be another Fury's Bolt. Now for this one you actually don't need orbs. We ended up picking up the orbs, and this ended up killing both of our healers, because I ran too close to my healer, and I believe the ranged here ran too close to their healer as well. But this is basically going to be another stepped leader, so just stack up together so that you get the donuts. Also, if there is some people dead, they will also get an AoE on them. So make sure that if there's corpses on the floor, do not stand close to them because they'll also drop their AoE puddle. But basically, this one you don't need a stack for, don't kill your healers like we did here. Luckily enough, we do have a red mage, so we could res both of them, and we were able to make it through to the end. Here is going to be getting, again, his thingy, so make sure that you have a stack. Luckily enough, I already had one when I killed my healer. And then this is basically going to be some kind of a soft enrage. He's going to be alternating between a normal Judgment Bolt as well as a powered up Judgment Bolt. But since Judgment Bolt basically always spawns balls whenever it goes off, you can just always pick up a orb stack for every of the Judgment Bolts. I don't think it actually reduces the damage that you take from the normal one, but you might as well just do it, just why not? Just in case that if you forget to grab one or something like that, you'll have one just in case for when he does have that Vuln. Now, I do think that after this, there is going to be another 14th thingy where there's like a bunch of Ixion spawning, but I do have a feeling that that might be Enrage. So that's pretty much the whole fight. It's a pretty fun one. The soft Enrage definitely does hit quite hard, so you might have to layer your mitigation for that one a little bit, because we did have some people dying towards this, but it could also be because both of our healers had weakness, so it was difficult for us to heal it up. But that's pretty much the whole fight. It was a pretty fun one. If you have any more questions about a certain mechanic or something like that, feel free to ask it in the comments down below or poke me on my Discord, because I'm usually around there as well. Of course, tonight we are going to be raiding again, so hopefully by then I'll have an E6 Savage POV out as well, because we're getting pretty close to killing that one. And then for tomorrow, I'll have the E6 Savage raid guide up as well. But that's gonna be it for this one. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments and I'll get back to you. And I'll see you in the next one.